All right, here's our video on mitochondria, which is plural for mitochondrion, right? That's singular. And what is mitochondria? As I get my pen ready, maybe we'll do yellow. There we go. So mitochondria is the powerhouse. It's the powerhouse of the cell. So in other words, we're saying that it's the battery of the cell. Or in other words, it's the energy factory. It's where energy is made. Right? So what the mitochondria does, it's going to take that chemical energy it's getting, which I'll explain later in the video, and it's going to create ATP. This is the energy that the cells need. And this is adenosine, I'll spell it out for you, adenosine triphosphate. So here's that tri, meaning three, and it's phosphate. So it has three phosphate atoms, adenosine triphosphate. And we'll go over that in the video. And it's very important to know about ATP is it can't be stored. So ATP, little arrow over here, can't be stored. So your mitochondria, which is in all your cells except for your red blood cells, it can't be stored. They're consistently, every second of every day, they're making ATP, which is amazing. And also, the mitochondria, they're in our cells, so they are organelles. They're organelles also. So I'll write organelles over there. And I'm going to go into in this video of how they came into the cell about 1 billion or so years ago. So you might hear it as a subcellular structure. That's a fancy word, right? So a subcellular, right, because it's inside the cell, structure is an organelle. And the size of the mitochondria and the amount of mitochondria inside your cells, you can have anywhere between 1,000 to 2,500 or more mitochondria inside your cell. They make about 25% of the volume of your cell. Now, when you look at textbooks and they're showing you a picture of the cell, usually they only show like 2 mitochondria, and no one explains it to them. But no, you have, and again, depending on the cell, like if your muscle cells will need more energy, and so forth. So here's your typical textbook picture of a cell. And as you can see right here, let's change the pen. I'll use red. You can see right here, here's a single mitochondrion, and they're only putting 2 in. Of course, it's only for teaching purposes. But again, you would have over 1,000 of them. And the size of the mitochondria, I'll write it over here, could anyway be, you're going to use this unit, mu. That's the mu. And it's a Greek letter. It's pronounced mu. And so they'll have it as like that with the M, right? And it means micrometer. A micrometer, by the way, is 1/1,000,000, put that extra comma in there, of a meter. 1/1,000,000th of a meter. And the size of the mitochondria can anywhere between 0.3 to about, well, actually 0.5, about 0.5 to 3. And again, when you see this kind of Greek letter, that's mu, and then the M, micrometers. So anywhere between 0.5 to 3 micrometers, which is about the size of some bacteria. And again, like I said before, the mitochondria are found in all our cells except the red blood cells. The red blood cells do not have DNA. And the thing about mitochondria is that they have their own chromosomes. They have their own DNA, which brings to this theory that the mitochondria a long time ago came into the cell, maybe billions of years ago, which I'll explain. So let me get a clean page, just clear that out. We'll get a clean page. So here's our blown up picture of a DNA. You can see all the folds in this. Again, this is the chemical factory. If you remember, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is created in the mitochondria. And like I said, they have their own DNA. You can see it there. we'll use blue. Why not? So you can see this arrow, their own DNA, separate from the nucleus of the cell. And so some scientists think that they were once independent of the cell. Independent. And somehow they got taken in from the cell. So they were once independent of the cell. And there's a term I'm going to use now. I'll write it over here. And the term is endosymbiotic. Well, it's right here. And I'll explain this. Endosymbiotic. So about maybe, and there, the estimates are, put a little estimate here, about 1.45 billion years ago, these one-celled, and they're prokaryotic, right? They were once prokaryotic, independent of the cell. We're eukaryotic and they're prokaryotic, the bacteria. And so they think that these purple non-sulfur bacteria somehow enslaved them or captured them 1.5 billion years ago. So the theory is, or the hypothesis, is these purple non-sulfur bacteria, and I'll get a picture of this for you, enslaved them. That's a nice word they use. Enslaved the mitochondria, or the mitochondria, right? The mitochondria. However billion years ago it was. And let me show you a picture of that. And it's going to come, we're going to be talking about endosymbiotic in a minute on that. And just remember, prokaryote cells do not have a nucleus like bacteria. Eukaryotic cells like us, we have a nucleus. All right, so here's these purple non-sulfur bacteria that enslaved the mitochondria 1.45 billion years ago. And so it created this endosymbiotic experience, or this relationship. So let's write symbiotic. So let's write both words actually. We'll have our yellow pen. Why not? Put our yellow pen over here. So, or actually let's just use red into white over here. So we did say endo it means within, and then symbiotic. So write that. So again, I said that the mitochondria have their own DNA. So this is it supports the theory that they were independent of the cell years ago, billions of years ago. So endosymbiotic, remember, endo means within, symbiotic means it's living together. And so there's three types. So the mitochondria, in this case, the mitochondria will become the symbiote, right? Because the symbiote's the one living inside. And usually there is this mutualism. Both are benefiting from this. Like we have gut bacteria inside of us, and so we feed the gut bacteria, hopefully when we're eating healthy foods, and then they help us also. And there's a lot of studies on gut bacteria. We have more bacteria in us than cells. So there's this mutualism in this endosymbiotic relationship. There could also be, I'll write this over here. I'll change the color so we don't confuse it. Why don't we use purple? And then there's let's put it over here first. Commensalism. And in commensalism, one will benefit, and the other has no effect. The other is not affected. It's not affected. So if there's something living inside us, for example, and it's not benefiting us in any way, then we're not affected by it. But that symbiote could be benefiting being inside of us. And the third one will be if it's a parasite. And in a parasite, it's harmful, right? One benefits and one is harmful to the other. So with the mitochondria, it was a mutualism. Both benefited from this relationship. I'll leave that up for a minute. All right, so again, let's remember the three in this endosymbiotic relationship, whether it's mutualism, right? I said they both benefit. Commensalism, one benefits, the other's not affected. And I didn't write the other one. We'll write it over here in yellow. A parasite, right? We know about this, like a tapeworm and something. Parasitism, we know, is where one benefits and the other is makes it is harmed by it. All right, let's move on with mitochondria. Oh, and by the way, this also is with chloroplasts in plants. They too would have had this endosymbiotic relationship with plants. So they were independent of the cell of the plant billions of years ago. And here's just this little cartoon picture of it. As you can see, our pen ready over here. Use red, right? Here's the mitochondria, and it somehow went inside this bacteria. It's purple non-sulfur bacteria, just like the chloroplast. And this is the relationship they have now. Do you remember the relationship? Endosymbiotic and mutualism. Now, with cellular respiration, there are so many steps involved as glucose enters our body. Remember, glucose is, if you recall from other videos I made, glucose is the preferred sugar that our body wants. And I'll just draw a really primitive picture here of a cell. But when glucose enters our bloodstream, insulin is released from the pancreas. So this is insulin. And insulin will attach itself to our cells, all our cells. And all this, and what it does is, in a very simplified version here, is it kind of opens the door or knocks on the door for glucose. And say all this glucose over here will enter our cell. And as you can see, this glucose will eventually enter the mitochondria, and many different steps. There's a lot of steps involved. But in the end, we do get from the mitochondria these 36 ATP, adenosine triphosphates, and this is the energy that we need. And all this is going on every second of every day in your life, and this is what we call cellular respiration. So in a simple way, we do need oxygen. So the oxygen in our cells, as we get oxygen in our cells, you see this O2 over here, because we need the O2, right? We breathe in two molecules of oxygen, not one. It's the O2, and the glucose, which can create ATP molecules. All right, and so let's look more at this mitochondrion, right? Singular. And we'll start, right? Why don't we start here? Well, first of all, let's get our pen going. Yeah, the pen. We'll use purple. So the cristae here, they're just folds. You can see there's folds around here that they're just folds, and they help with chemical reactions. So they're adding to the space in the mitochondria, and they help with chemical reactions. Of course, those chemical reactions will produce ATP, right? They help with chemical reactions. The matrix, there's the matrix over here inside here. And then again, the matrix is also creating these folds for proteins. The inner membrane is where ATP is created. This is the important one. ATP is created in the inner membrane. ATP is created, adenosine triphosphate. The outer membrane has proteins, has these proteins in the outer membrane also, and they're called porins, by the way, these proteins. And they also have a lot of enzymes to help with cell functions. And inside the matrix also, there is hundreds of enzymes. They have hundreds of enzymes, right? Enzymes. There we go. So the really important part, if we're thinking about where we get our energy, is the inner membrane where the ATP is created. Now, the other thing, like we know, and we said this before in the video, is the mitochondria have their own DNA. And it's important to know that we get our DNA from the mitochondria. Our mitochondrial DNA we only get from our mother. So let me explain that. Oh, and by the way, the ribosomes are a protein factory themselves, right? Because when there is transcription and going on, when the mRNA in the nucleus is transcribing, and you want the codes, right? We have the A, C, T, and G, adenine, cytosine, thymine, and guanine. These codes are coded in the nucleus, and of course, in the ribosomes, proteins are created. But let me explain that DNA that we only get from our mother, the mitochondrial DNA we only get from our mother. And for many years, scientists didn't know why we only got it from our mothers, the DNA. We do know that the mitochondrial DNA in the sperm don't survive, and so that's why we get it from our mother. And so, in that case, if this is you, and we'll use yellow. Here you are. That's you. There's your father, and there's your mother. So you will have the same mitochondrial DNA as your mother. And let's say you had siblings, and all your siblings will have it from your mother. And if your mother had a sibling, right, your aunt, you're going to have the same mitochondria of your aunt from your mother's side, and all of your cousins from your aunt on your mother's side. So all these people would have the same mitochondria of you. And of course, your mother's mother, your grandma, your great grandma, and so forth. So you won't have the mitochondria from your father, there's your father, and you won't have it from your father's sister, right? Your aunt from your father's side, you will not have that. So again, you get mitochondria only from your mother's side. So your mother, your grandma, your great grandma, all the way, keep going, right? And then again, all the females will give it to even your boy cousin will have the mitochondria, so you'll share mitochondria, right? And even let's say your sister's brother. We'll put a little square there. It's get a little confusing. So your sister's brother has the same mitochondria as you, but not your father's sister or your father's brother. They wouldn't have that. Okay, that's mitochondria.